Hello everyone and welcome to another News Coolum video. I wanted to talk a little bit about truck range, but in particular I wanted to talk about EV truck range. And I did a video a long time ago. I was debating whether I was ever going to publish it, and I'm glad I kind of waited because I wanted to talk about electric vehicle truck range in particular and what we can expect for some of these upcoming models. And since I recorded that, several, in my opinion, maybe the most compelling and most important EV trucks have been announced. And so it helps to actually frame this because since I recorded that, both the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Chevy Silverado EV have been announced. With the F-150, we have a lot more information. With the Chevrolet Silverado, all we really know is that they stated 400 miles of range and it's going to be using the new Ultium battery platform. But that actually dovetails perfectly well into the video that I recorded because I wanted to focus on not using EV truck manufacturer range claims, but a different number to actually assess what we actually believe their range to be. And throughout the video, I focused on the largest capacity or longest range electric vehicles announced by these manufacturers. And Ford hasn't actually stated the capacity of the F-150 Lightning. But if you look at the numbers in the original tech sheet that they had released, the specifications indicate that it's about 160 kilowatt hours for the extended range, longer range F-150 Lightning. And with the Chevrolet Silverado EV, of course, using the Ultium platform, it'd have access to the same 200 kilowatt hour Ultium battery that the GMC Hummer EV is using. And so using that as framing, it dovetails into what I had made in this video, this metric that I had set up in this video about using the actual capacity of these EV trucks to determine or anticipate their range rather than relying on their range ratings, which I think for most of these automakers is off. And one of the other reasons I'm glad I waited is because I've seen a lot of experts, quote unquote, online talking about the truck ranges for these EVs. And I either think that they lack experience with trucks or they lack experience with EVs in general. But either way, I feel like some of the numbers that they're putting out there aren't accurate and they're going to be misleading. And I don't want to pick on Marquise Brownlee, but he was probably the most notable. And he was one of the ones that thought, oh, Ford is sandbagging their EV range with the F-150 Lightning. I don't think it's that at all. First of all, Ford has a huge amount of experience with trucks, and they have a huge amount of experience with EVs, and they have experience with EV trucks. So I think they know full well what they're doing when they're assessing their range. So I don't think that they were sandbagging, and I don't think that they were being overly conservative. And I think Marquise, he maybe doesn't have a lot of experience with trucks, I don't know, but it seems to me that most of his experience with EVs are with Teslas, and Tesla tends to use a different EPA testing cycle, which inflates their range by about 15% compared to other EVs. So he might be getting hit with a double whammy of different expectations. But I actually think Ford might be one of the more accurate in terms of what they're telling consumers their likely range is going to be, because again, we have to deal with typical driving habits with a truck. 1,000 pounds of cargo, pretty normal. Freeway speed driving for 50% of your driving, pretty normal. So these are things that you have to fit into that anticipated EV range. But anyway, I've editorialized enough. I want to just segue directly into the video. This is me about 6 months ago trying to express what I thought we should be using to anticipate EV truck range. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming EV pickup trucks or trucks. I really consider most of them SUVs, but subject for another video. But in particular, things like the Cybertruck, the Rivian R1T, the GMC Hummer EV, and then let's not forget the Bollinger B1, B2 pickup trucks. I wanted to talk about their range and what we can kind of expect. And, you have like the Rivian with their R1T, the top end package with a 400 plus mile range, right? The GMC Hummer EV, they're saying it's a 350 plus mile range. The Bollinger, they're only saying 200 mile range. And then, of course, with the Cybertruck, they have the big number, the 500 mile range. And I think we need to go into this with a little bit better understanding of what to expect in terms of range for trucks. And part of the reason for that is EVs are already counterintuitive when it comes to range. They don't operate the same way as gas-powered cars, where you take a gas-powered car on a freeway trip, your miles actually increase, your range and your efficiency actually increases, because there's so much overhead loss for a gas car that when you're driving faster, you actually balance out that overhead loss with the how many miles you're traveling per each gallon of fuel you're burning. With an EV, it's different, right? If you get a rated range of 300 miles, say, in an EV, and you take it out on the freeway and you're doing 70 to 80 miles an hour, which is common on North American freeways, you can expect at least 20% less than your rated range. So there's a huge amount of variation that you can see within electric vehicles in their range anyway. But in terms of EV trucks, I think we need to go into it with a different sort of mindset about how we anticipate the range that we're going to see. And with all of the 4 trucks that I mentioned, we pretty much know the battery size except for one, and that's the Tesla Cybertruck, right? So they've given us a range, but they have not given us the actual battery capacity. And based on just what I know so far and just looking at these different trucks, I would say that Bollinger and GM are being on the conservative side, right? So 350 miles of range in the Hummer EV on a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack, 200 miles of range in the Bollinger on, I think it's 120, 125 kilowatt hour battery pack. Whereas I think Rivian is being a little on the optimistic side. 400 miles of range on a 180 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's pretty much going to be under your ideal driving conditions. And then again, like I said, we just don't know for Tesla. But if their battery pack is anything less than 250 kilowatt hours, I think they're being a little bit optimistic about their range. What I'm sort of focusing in on is I think typical driving in these electric trucks, we can expect about 2 miles per kilowatt hour. And that also actually aligns with the Ford Ranger Electrics that I'm rebuilding right now, that I'm restoring. If you're really gentle, you can get close to 4 miles per kilowatt hour on them, but that's like 40, 45 mile an hour driving. Freeway speed driving, all of a sudden that drops to maybe 3 miles per kilowatt hour or 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And the Ford Ranger Electrics are smaller, more compact pickup trucks. So yeah, you're not going to see that level of efficiency in these larger trucks, bigger, heavier, more frontal area at freeway speeds. And that's what a lot of this efficiency is going to come down to. So I think 2 miles per kilowatt hour is a pretty good stepping off point for just that baseline efficiency that we can expect. Once you start going freeway speeds, a minimum of about 20% of that rated range is going to need to come off the top, and probably closer to about 25% for these larger trucks, right? And that's really being generous. So now you're looking at, instead of 2 miles per kilowatt hour, you can expect closer to about 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And then if you throw on things like a heavy load and a trailer, you are going to be close to about 50% less than your baseline range of 2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is now getting down to 1 mile per kilowatt hour. And so this is going to be a really important factor in determining what these trucks are going to get. Like I said, I don't really actually trust any of their range numbers, whether they're a little bit on the conservative side or a little bit on the optimistic side. It doesn't matter. I'm just going with what can be expected based on what we've seen just
other vehicles and their efficiencies. And that's on a full charge. So a lot of times your subsequent charge range is only going to be up to 80%. So then you have to take, 80% of that, and that's how far you're really going to be traveling between stops. That's kind of what you can look forward to and expect in terms of range for these vehicles. Again, Tesla is the big X factor here. We don't know how big their battery is. So I can't really even make any sort of reasonable estimate as to what you can expect from the Cybertruck under those conditions. Freeway speed driving, towing trailer, we just don't know. And so realistically, the difference between the Rivian R1T, the GMC Hummer EV, and the top spec Cybertruck, their real world ranges are, I would be surprised if there was more than about 40 to 50 miles between all three of them difference in their top spec form. That's just under typical driving conditions. But, as you start to add loads and things like that, you can expect a bigger impact to those vehicles with a smaller battery that have a higher baseline efficiency anyway, because that higher baseline efficiency is more impacted by outside factors such as elevation, weather, things of those natures.
All right, well, I hope that was helpful to you. As you can see, the math for electric trucks is different, but hey, it is easy. And, that's kind of what I wanted to express, is just use your own metrics to sort of calculate, and everybody's experience is going to be different anyway, right? It's all going to be individualistic, and I don't want this to be something that dissuades or discourages people from considering an electric truck, because I know a lot of truck owners who would benefit from it, and it's just assessing your own personal situation. But what I don't want is I don't want potential or prospective EV truck owners to be misled. So if you actually make your living using a truck, you need to know that it's capable of doing the things that you need it to do, that you expect it to do and want it to do. So, for some people, standard range trucks are going to be fine. The base battery, if you're just a basic truck user, I could probably get away with it because I don't do a lot of towing or things like that with my trucks. But some people who do need towing, maybe they want faster, longer range trucks. So again, it's all just up to your own personal needs and expectations. Like I said, I think the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Chevrolet Silverado EV are the ones that probably impressed me the most at this point. And just in terms of their upcoming details, I'm going to be watching them very, very closely. And again, Tesla is the big X factor. Unless it has at least a 250 kilowatt hour battery pack, I don't see how it's going to see that 500-mile range, not realistically. So again, just use this as a way of assessing your needs and maybe looking. And then again, nothing's stopping you from doing a wait and see approach and seeing what some of the real world reviews are for these trucks and how they actually perform by trusted sources, right? Like I'm sure TfL is going to be testing some of these electric trucks, and you're going to see real world numbers that, I think are going to pretty closely align with my rule of thumb, which again is just an estimate. It's just a metric for just setting a baseline expectation. So I hope this is helpful. I hope it was useful. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And as always, thank you for watching.